Hi, and welcome to the Expansive podcast. Well, it is a lively show, but it's also a live show. It's also a live show that we do every Wednesday at 3 p.m. South African Standard Time. Thank you for joining us. Whether you are joining us live or listening to the podcast, we always appreciate you being with us. And of course, I'm looking at my ever elegant co-host, but I'm not seeing the medal that he used to wear around his neck. So that obviously that fascination faded quite quickly right there.
Yeah.
Oh,
look, I have it right next. I have it right next to my computer still. Trust me. Every time somebody brings it up, I'm like straight into the camera. Hello, everybody. Wonderful to be here, and thank you all for joining us. Whether you're listening on podcast or live, we're always very excited to be putting these shows together, discussing what we're going to be discussing, holding ourselves accountable to this show has been really a fascinating process. We were reading stats during the week that of the 2 million podcasts out there, just remind me of the stats, I think something like 70% don't go past 21 episodes or something like that, some ridiculous stats. And so just the longevity of having a podcast that's now on 70 odd podcast episodes is really quite a thing. You know, if you think about that in week terms and take it all the way back, that's nearly 2 years of work that we've been doing with a little few breaks here and there. So really great to have you all here.
I did some quick math the other day, and if you started listening to the podcast, it will take you 24 hours to complete if you listen to every episode back to back. So
wow.
Yeah, we have a full day's worth of content. If anyone feels like doing a marathon, the Expansive edition, we'll sponsor that. Let us know.
I don't know if that's such a good thing. We don't recommend it. Don't do that at home. It's much better taking it in bite sizes and then integrate it into your life rather than one full torturous 24 hours. Well, Erik, tell me what's going on in Joburg. How is Joburg, and how is you in Joburg?
Yeah, Joburg is cold, but otherwise good. It's been an interesting 2 weeks, kind of getting back into the rhythm of things, focusing quite a bit on my writing again. So overall, quite good. You know, we go through these spells where I think we are like highly creative, and then times we don't feel as creative and we need to just kind of refuel, and then times where we are highly productive, and then times where we need to refuel. And I feel like the past 2 weeks I've been on a bit of a high, especially creatively. Like there's a lot of stuff sort of just pouring out of my mind. So that's been really good. And, I think when that happens for us, we need to capitalize on it as much as possible. So I've been doing a lot of writing, a lot of content creation, with a lot more to come. So yeah, overall pretty good. What's been happening in Cape Town?
Well, look, the sun comes up here at 7:45 in the morning. And so I've become exceptionally lazy unless I have to go do training with the Ironman crew. Other than that, I'm in my PJs most days and just doing my work. Like right now, I'm pretty well dressed up here, but everywhere else it's cold, it's rainy, the sun's coming up late. So I find like I'm a bit of a Groundhog Day, doing the same thing in and out every day with nothing to look forward to really. Like there's not like overseas trip coming or like getting together with people with wave 3 here. I just canceled coming up to Joburg this week, speaking for Suits and Sneakers. And so there seems to be a cocooning effect again. I see, and I'm very jealous of people in London at restaurants which are full, and America is doing everything like nothing even happened with Corona. And here we are just experiencing third wave, which makes me feel frustrated. But I'm also enjoying being lazy. I don't think I've been lazy enough in my life. And I'm just enjoying the fact that I'm not putting too much pressure on myself to always be performing. Although in saying that, work is super busy. I'm just I'm not like, I suppose, I don't know, I'm not like stuck into it. Like, I'm like that, I'm just like taking things easy, and I'm practicing your 2 words of the year, relaxed focus.
Yes.
And I'm actually enjoying that, relaxed focus. So, but let's get stuck into this week's podcast. We were going to do a podcast called What a Time to Be Alive. And what are your reasons for thinking that it's a good time to be alive? But we'll do that next week. It's a good podcast. We think will be a great way to express all the exciting things happening with technology, with humanity, with crypto, all the new exciting things that are coming. without us always focusing on all the dread, the drudgery, and all the issues that are happening around the world, which is an ongoing process. So next week, make sure you tune in to What a Time to Be Alive. Why don't you set us up for this week, Erik?
Yeah, so I think what your bit of a intro was actually the perfect setup, in that as the world is progressing, as we are kind of changing the focus in many ways for how we are going about doing business. And I mean, we see this at a macro level, at a micro level, how economies are shifting, how people are, there's this big debate about remote work versus hybrid work versus being in the office. We saw this big thing about I think they call it the Great Resignation. Did you see that? Essentially
Yes.
saying that, people are now deciding, or they not deciding, but like they're in a state where they want to choose how they work. And what that's leading to is that people are resigning in their droves and looking for ways that accommodate their lifestyle. So I think what we are seeing is that, we really are in a stage and in a time where we are approaching business differently. And we were speaking about this, and you had some ideas around how we are building businesses in 2021, and some of your research, obviously, but also just practically how you've been going about building businesses and your business this year. So I wanted us to dive a bit deeper into that and to get an understanding of what are some of your thoughts and some of your own actions regarding building business this year.
Yeah, look, I think it's such a hot topic. I was on 702 last week talking about the future of work. And now you're talking about the Great Resignation, where how many airlines in America have been down because there isn't enough staff to actually run them. Many restaurants don't have enough staff to have all their sections open. And so we are seeing this proliferate in sort of Western countries where people are starting to choose how they work and what they prioritize, rather than being stuck in the sort of old drudgery of work, employment, employee, and then complaining about the process, actually taking on the responsibility for changing things up. But where today's topic comes from is a couple of things. A few months ago, I spoke to the CEO of a big trend company in Germany, a fascinating guy. I think he suffered from ADHD because he was all over the place in our Zoom call. But what he said to me, he says, "Zon, what is happening here?" That's a terrible German accent. I won't do that. I don't know how to do a German accent. Das is good, yeah. But he said to me, the government here has brought about legislation to bring about planet centricity over consumer centricity. And that was the first time I actually got to start thinking about the fact that how focused we have been as a society on consumer centricity over everything else. And what that has done, it's created businesses like Uber, which underpays their staff, will become menace businesses. And then we have to tip them where they're not really being looked after how they should be. And you're creating businesses that are destroying the world so we can get our food in 30 minutes or however they're going about doing it. And we just haven't been focused on a holistic approach because we've been so clear on the consumer. But I think that's changing. And I think we have to start prioritizing colleagues, contemporaries, partners, collaborators. Because ultimately, if you're able to attract and enthuse and motivate and keep inspired and keep focused on the end result, you can attract some amazing people into your bubble, and in that bubble, create amazing businesses, products, services, and impact on society. So what I've been doing is I've really been zoning in on trying to figure out, how do I seek out better and better and better people to service me? And this is very similar to finding your passion. You know what makes you find your passion? Exposure to as many different subjects as possible. And so what I've been doing, and you know this, because I keep pushing it on our side, is, and I do this with my own brand as well, is who else are we seeing? What else are we speaking about? When are we going to be doing something differently? And it's this constant drive for me. And I'm constantly interviewing different service providers to understand, what do you do? How do you do it? Does it fit in with what I'm doing? How does it dovetail? Can we build something ultimately together? Because I think that's the real magic in today's world, is that, we're moving away from this hierarchical system to a shared system. And in a shared system, we must all share the pros and the cons. So if we're all making money, we're all making money. If we're not making money, none of us are making money. And so we bring about a very key type of personality trait, when you start thinking about things like this. Self-motivated, self-driven, people with initiative that want to share your vision and have got very specific skill sets. And so my focus has been, how do I attract them? How do I enthuse them? How do I partner with them? How do I collaborate with them? And how do we have a shared vision that's malleable and adaptable as we move into the future? You know, being stuck on one strategy and then hiring people to do it, I just think the employee-employer system is continuously being mocked in social media. People complaining about having a job and having a boss that's an idiot and, you know, not enjoying going to work and, oh my God, it's Monday again. Surely that is a tonality that our society has, and it leaks out in jokes. But the truth is, if you're doing your own thing and you're the master of your own destiny and you're creative in your own way and you've got grit in your passion, why would you not want to have those things and then partner with other people doing those things? And now all of a sudden you have a new business model, a business model that's partner driven, that's vision driven, that's high impact driven. And one of the calls I had this morning, which was such an awesome call with these two guys that are helping me build sort of funnels around my masterclasses. And the final thing was, everybody on the call had done a Joe Dispenza 7-day meditation retreat. Everybody on the call had done an ayahuasca ceremony. Everybody on the call was focused on partnering together on building this thing and all sharing in the revenue. And it was such a simple thing to discuss. And if you haven't done ayahuasca and if you haven't done Joe Dispenza meditation retreats, you will have some experience in your life that you've done that has had a huge impact in your life. And then if you're doing business with somebody, or if you're in an intimate relationship with somebody, you want that person to have done that process with you or on their own. So you have a clear, similar perspective of the world. You know, Erik, you and I have got such a love for animals, and it immediately connects us, you know? And so the Joe Dispenzas and the ayahuascas and these things also connect you on an emotional, vibrational level. So it's really about developing teams. And I think Marnus Burdrake also is very good at this. He develops these small teams to bring about amazing impact or build big businesses. And I'm finding that becoming the real sort of magic, that you can create 3, 4, 5 people in a team, all are sharing in the wins of the business, all sharing a vision, all bringing their passionate grit to the table, and now you can start building things. And I think it's a really exciting way to be doing things, rather than being in a hierarchical organizational structure that just takes too long and just doesn't really fit our society as it is right now.
There's a lot to unpack from what you said. I'm trying to think where to start, but I want to actually go right back to the start. And the one thing that, like, when I think of consumer centricity versus, let's say, team centricity, like, consumer centricity is what helps us to create products, right? Because it's how we figure out what people want and how do we fill the gap for them, and how do we give a solution to a problem they have. So it's not a one or the other, right? Like, we're not doing away with consumer centricity.
So you're absolutely right. Thank you for bringing that up. I think it's the same idea as shareholders' priority to stakeholder priority. And if you think about the way they're doing that, they're prioritizing employees, then communities, then shareholders, then consumers. And so it's not about excluding it. It's about the level of priority you give to somebody and something. So I could go to a country that gives me cheap service, let's say India. I can get all my stuff done by cheap as possible, because I'm so focused on giving my consumer the cheapest version or the most efficient version of my product. I'm not taking that. And I think that's an old system. I think the new system is prioritizing people you work with and who you choose to work with, and who do you become to be able to attract those types of people to work with.
Okay, that's great. I think that's the perfect differentiation, because I think it's easy to get caught in the trap that, you know, it's one or the other, or like we have this very binary way of thinking about it. But I think that clears it up perfectly.
Thank you. I should have been clearer.
No, the second thing that I want to know is, I think if I look at you from the outside, and if I look at how you've been building teams around you, and I just want to hear, like, you know, you said, how do you become the kind of person that attracts those people into your team? So I want to hear a bit more about that. But when I look at the way that you've brought people into your ecosystem, it always seems that you bring them in from your network, right? So, like, it's almost like your personal brand drives the network that provides the people that you end up working with. Like they come from your audience in a way, right?
Yeah.
So how do you think people think about that from a getting the right kind of people into your system point of view? Because this is a massive issue to find those people.
Yeah, look, great point. And you know, when anybody asks me, so John, can you introduce me to your PR company, your copywriter, your publisher, blah, 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 they keep going with all these people. And I always say to them, look, the way I go about doing it is I share on social media that I'm looking for this type of person. And then I allow the right person to bubble up. And it doesn't always happen. It sometimes happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. But understand that everybody on my social circles is almost a consumer of mine. They've already built trust with me. So whether they buy a masterclass or they want to work with me, I've already built that trust. And so I have been developing my emotional state, my mental high performance state, my physical abilities, and all of these I'm trying to do as best as I can. That's becoming the type of person I want to work with. Because if I'm doing the best I can across the board, I now work with Anita, my business manager, who's a demon Muay Thai fighter, a mother, a wife. She's quite religious and quite into her religion, which I think is awesome. She's got so many balls that she juggles. Now, I have no idea how I attracted her into my life. You know what I mean? I put on social media. She was a marketing exec at a big bank and something didn't work out there. So all of a sudden she was available to do work with me. She'd never done anything like this before, but energetically and emotionally, we were so well linked, you know? And so, yes, building and developing your personal brand not only builds trust with consumers, it builds trust with possible and potential partners, because they are also watching you, and they look at you and me, Erik. I mean, that's also another example. It's like this also came about because of my personal brand out in the media. And so that's why the business of you is so important, because it attracts everything to you, from friendships to dating to colleagues to contemporaries to clients. And that's why it's so important to keep building it.
And, you know, I want to ask you another question, which is going to be, how do companies take this, right? Because in companies, you don't necessarily have the personal brand. But I also want to add in, before I ask you the question, is the fact that a big trend I think that we're going to see in the time to come is that leaders will need to develop their personal brands to attract talent. Like that's going to be like, you know, Elon Musk, you want to go and work for him. You know, like if you're an engineer, like you want to be associated with those brands. So I think the brand presence and the leaders within those brands need to pay a lot of attention to this shifting landscape, that they need to become more and more visible, because people do want to have a face associated with a business and not just the brand or the logo, right? So like there's definitely a shift in that. But putting that aside, what do you think companies need to think about when it comes to building teams at this stage, given what you've been speaking about?
So a couple of things. I want to go back to personal brand inside an organization and outside an organization. Just remember that Richard Branson, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates are bigger brands than the companies they've built. And they've built some of the biggest companies in the world. But their personal brands are bigger than those companies. And so personal brand is, we build trust with humans, with brands as well, but much easier with humans. And what we have to realize is that if within an organization, you still need to develop brand, because if you're an Accenture or if you're an EY or whoever you're working for, you have a global workforce that's knowing who you are and building trust with you. And if you want to move in that corporate ladder and move up, the best thing you can do is develop your personal brand within that structure. But also remember, if your name is Paul Smith, you're not going to be working for Accenture forever. And Paul Smith is eventually going to be working somewhere else, and developing that personal brand online is always going to put you in good stead, because wherever you go, somebody's building trust with you, somebody's doing that. So I don't think it's any different working in an organization or outside an organization. I think outside an organization, you obviously have more impetus or more drive to build your personal brand. But within an organization, I still think it's incredibly important to position yourself as a thought leader, because next time a promotion comes up, like who are they looking at? You know, who's on top of mind, who's been adding enough value? All these sort of things are really important. So I look, I'm not a corporate animal, so I don't understand corporate as well. But I do know that inside corporate structures, they are the heroes. And those heroes are the ones who are top of mind, who are being seen or outspoken or making a move inside that corporate. So I think it's important on both aspects, and all because of the internet, and all because of social media. because now there's no barriers, there's no gateway. So you might as well be building brand, more than anything else. Was there, you said about teams, right? Okay.
Yeah, I was just, and it actually ties back very perfectly to your very first point, which was that these days people are just so hyper aware. That's what the internet has done. It's create this incredible awareness for us around what's happening in other companies. I think previously you were aware of what happened in your bubble, and perhaps you got home and you spoke to your husband or your wife or your partner, whoever, and they told you what happened at their company, and that was your frame of reference for, am I being treated fairly? Am I getting a good remuneration? What are my leaders like? I've spoken to many people who have no idea what good leadership looks like. And the reason for that is because they're in a bubble, right? But what the internet is allowing us to do now is to see, this is how Basecamp actually runs their organization internally. This is Netflix's culture deck. And this is what Amazon's leadership principles are. So all of a sudden, you have this hyper awareness of all these different companies. And therefore, you get to benchmark and you get to say, well, actually, the way that I'm being treated here isn't how I want to be treated. I want to go look for a company that values the kind of person that I am, what I do, how I show up, how I want to work. So I think all of those things, you need to be aware that people are able to benchmark a lot easier these days.
I love that, but I just want to go quantum quickly, because in the quantum world, you have attracted that organization that is not respecting you because of your own level of respect for yourself. So it's just echoing that back to you. And this is where it comes down to the work that you do on yourself in private, where that then reflects and echoes and projects and creates expectations on the outside world. So it's one thing to say, I want to work for an organization that respects my time. There's another thing to say, what healing of what trauma do I need to do within myself to naturally attract an organization that's going to respect what I'm doing? And so that's also something you need to take into consideration. It's easy to sit and go, oh, my boss is an idiot. Well, you're the one who brought him into your life. There was nobody else that actually brought your boss into your life. You did, So that's also something to take into consideration. But last thing that just to close up with is that what I've also been practicing is this idea of building a container without knowing exactly what you want to put into it yet. And I do this with my books, and I do it right now with the School of Modern Wisdom. And if you watched Holston's, that great series on Netflix about that designer, he was a hat designer and then just created a fashion show, not knowing what to put into it, but he pegged the fashion show and said, I'm going to do something amazing. And I know this with my books, as I peg a date, I speak to my publisher, I speak to my PR, I'm like, okay, book's coming out in August. I don't know what that book is going to be 100% yet, but magic happens. And when you start attracting these people in, the ideas start flowing, new things start creating, and you're adaptable in your way of what you're filling this container with. So be clear that you don't have to have absolute 100% sense of what goes into that container, but be clear on the fact just to build the container and let the people come. I mean, I don't know if you're old enough, but I'm sure you are. You remember Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner? And I remember that movie where, yeah. So for me, I don't know how old I was. I think I was 12 or 14. And I remember watching it, and he said, build it and they will come. And it was such a deep moment for me. I think it was the first time I'd seen anything, I don't know, energetic like that, I would think, I'd never seen anything like that. It was such a deep resonance that 30 years later, I'm still talking about this movie. And it's exactly that. It's build it and it will come. Just allow it to breathe, be adaptable with it, and those people have started arriving, and they juiced up, and they eager to add value, and they're being respected, and they're in a transparent partnership, and they're willing to put some time and sweat in for the equity that you're providing, and they're sharing your vision. I mean, it's an exciting time, it's an exciting way to build organizations like this, and many organizations. You can have like these many 5, 6, 7 people, and a few of them. And I think it's a fun way to go about building business.
Listen, brother, I want to wrap up. There's 3 more questions I want to ask you quickly. The first comes from Daniel. He says, what are some of the very basic key elements of that container? In 30 seconds, how would you answer that?
Well, the container is really just about a vision that you have, something that you yearn to want to bring about. And for me, the vision here is to try and help high school kids understand modern wisdom. It's for them to understand resilience and how to build future strategies, for them to understand consumer behavior, as well as understanding the way they can bring about a planet centricity process of bringing the consumer as a priority. So that's the container for me. And amazing people have started to arrive to fill that container up as well.
So the container is the vision, and what's being filled up is how it's going to get done.
Yeah, I don't quite know how the school's going to come about, but all of a sudden now we've got a high school we're working with, and we've got a corporate we're working with, and now they're starting to becoming two different types of schools. And one is going for the corporate and one is going for the high school. So that's also evolving. And I was speaking to Anita, my business manager, earlier, and I was like, amazing how they're evolving on their own and in two different directions, but they're both part of the School of Modern Wisdom, And then we're working with people in Thailand and in Copenhagen and in Pretoria. And it's just amazing how the things is coming together, but just being relaxed by it. You know what I mean? I think that's the key, is just to be playful with it and relaxed with it and just be having fun with it.
Cool. So 2 more questions. The first is your book dropping this year?
Yes, of course. 10,000 days. We're building merchandise. You've got to see what we're doing. We're building merchandise for 10,000 days, where you can count down your 10,000 days and to count the number of days you got left to really kick into your genius. And if you realize that you have finite time on this earth, what's taking you so long to try and figure out what your genius is? So we build merchandise with it. We've got clothing coming with it. So yes, it's dropping. August, September, somewhere around there.
Excellent. And then the second question I have you seen that there's a new show on Netflix called Dog's Life?
No, but you're the second person who's told me about it.
Yeah, you just go check it out. It's sponsored by Hills, and it's based in Cape Town, and they have these beautiful like dog sanctuaries. It kind of reminded me of Superdog, like you if you want to say like
Superdog sanctuaries.
So it seems like they have these farms where they do adoptions, and then the show is about people going to go meet the dogs. They meet like 3 dogs, and then they choose which dog they're going to adopt. Go check it out. I think you'll love it. And there's also a little plug now for the show in the podcast.
Oh, good. Well, look, I'm always wary when somebody tells me to go watch a dog movie. I'm like, oh my God, am I ready to cry? Am I ready to sob? I don't know if I'm ready to sob yet. So I have to wait a bit, but yes, I'll go check it out for sure.
Cool. Listen, thank you so much for this episode. I think it was great. Always excellent to listen to you speaking about business and how you go about it, because I think we have very different ways of thinking about business. And very different ways.
We should do a podcast on that. We should do a podcast on our different ways.
Yeah. And but I always feel very inspired by it, and I always feel like it stretches me in my thinking to also like incorporate different ways of thinking about how I go about building business as well, but in many different ways. So thank you for that, and I'm sure everyone took a lot of value from this. So if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe, make sure that you are rating it, and make sure that you share it with people who you think could find value in it. We are on the precipice of really kind of ramping up this podcast. So watch out in the next few weeks, and tell us if you see us around.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Erik. It's been wonderful to be with you as always. And everybody listening, please take care of yourself. And once you've done that, go and take care of somebody else. Ciao.
Cheers.